Hi everyone, my name's Phoebe and I'm a second year PA student. I just wanted to film a short video talking about my tips and tricks for acing your didactic year. So if you are a first year PA student, hopefully this helps you out. So my first tip is to start early. And I know you've heard this from every single person, but it's absolutely true. When I say start early, I don't just mean studying after class, I mean the entire process. What I would do is as soon as lecture slides would come out, because they'd be uploaded usually before the actual lecture, I would immediately start making my notes and study guide based on those slides and reviewing all the content. That way, when we actually started going over it in class, it wasn't completely new material to me. I already had a foundational understanding of what we were going to be going through, and then I could really focus on what the professor was saying. That way, I wasn't trying to simultaneously take notes and also listen. I could ask any questions that I'd come up with in the meantime, and if there was something I needed to jot down, I could just jot it down in the appropriate area on my study guide. On the other side of that, once you do go over the material in lecture, start studying. I know a lot of my classmates tended to base their study schedule on when the actual exam was versus when the content for that exam came out. And I would not recommend doing this just because it's not uncommon for you to have 3 exams in a single week in PA school because it is so accelerated. If you base it off of when the exam actually is, you're gonna find yourself super swamped the week before, be really stressed out, trying to pull all-nighters and drinking 4 energy drinks a day, versus if you go based on when the material actually comes out and you start studying and then you're just done with that topic and then move on to the next class, study, done with that topic, and then just take the last few days before the week of the exams to actually brush up on kind of last minute things. It's a lot less stressful. You'll have a much better time in school, and I find that it helps information stick better also. Second, I know this isn't fun, but if you can portion out 30 minutes to an hour most mornings, some mornings, to look over material and study a bit, I would highly recommend it. I definitely find myself most refreshed in the morning compared to after a long day of classes and then trying to study. I always say that studying for 1 hour in the morning is kind of equivalent to studying 3 hours in the afternoon, just because things tend to stick better when you're looking at them first thing. It's usually like first thing and then like right before bed. If you can portion out a little bit of time, even if it's just 15 minutes even. Number 3 is to figure out what kind of studying works best for you. I've heard most people say that it takes approximately 1 semester of PA school to really kind of get your study habits down. What I found works for me and what I found works for a lot of people in my class is to study by yourself first and then do group study at the very end. So when you study by yourself, you kind of get a basic understanding of everything. That way, group study is useful versus going into group studying and having that be the first time you're really learning the material. I've also found that having group study at the end is useful because people will just kind of be blurting things out, and some of those things actually will end up on the test. You'll be like, oh, I remember so-and-so said that. Group study is good for last minute, making sure you know everything that you're supposed to know, figuring out if there are areas that you should know that you don't, but definitely get your own independent studying first before you do group session. Tip number 4, start with the hard stuff first when you're studying. And I know this is also something that is kind of hard to do sometimes, especially when you just want to be like, oh, let me just get through the easy stuff and then just look at that later. Definitely do the hard stuff first. You're kind of fighting an uphill battle if you don't study that way, because not only is it getting harder as you study, but I feel like the willpower you have to actually sit down and do that work diminishes as you are actually studying. Definitely go with the topics that you're unfamiliar with first, and then save the easy stuff that you can just get through like that at the end. My 5th tip kind of goes along with that one. Take the time to understand the pathophysiology behind different conditions. I know this can kind of feel time consuming, maybe unnecessary, especially when you're first starting PA school. There are a lot of topics where you can do very well on the test without understanding it, but I found in the long run, if you understand the pathophysiology, it's just so much easier. It makes the rest of PA school so much easier because you actually understand cause and effect behind different conditions. And then even when you lose all that kind of last minute memorization you do for the exam, you'll still remember, oh, this causes this, so this is most likely the answer. In the long run, you're actually saving time even if it doesn't feel like it in the beginning. Tip number 6, a lot of professors might disagree, but it's to not use every resource that is given to you. So that includes textbooks, question banks, study guides. Do not use everything. I'm saying this because PA school is a very accelerated experience. You'll figure out very quickly that your studying time is limited and there's just so much content you have to go through. I would recommend picking 2 to 3 main things things. First should always be whatever lecture slides are given, because during your didactic year, it's the professors that are writing the exam, so it's most likely going to be material from what they're actually teaching class. And I, again, always make that into my own study guide because I like to study that way. And then I would find maybe one question bank to do practice questions from. A lot of people like Rosh, some people like UWorld, there's Hippo, whatever you choose, just pick one. I found that it's less important to know absolutely every tiny little detail versus knowing the really important stuff. There are certain topics you'll realize that every exam, whether it's like national standardized exam or just in class, that they like to go over and over again. I did not read any textbooks during the didactic year except for one. It wasn't because I needed to supplement, it's because the professor for this class specifically said that there would be approximately 10 questions on each exam that were pulled from the textbook that weren't covered in class. I would go look and see like which little bits weren't covered and what I should know from those. Otherwise, how I would supplement wasn't with a textbook. I would see something I didn't know and then I would look it up either online through multiple AI sources just to make sure they're all kind of fact-checked and there's some kind of actual study backing them up. That's how I would study, so it was very specific to what I was looking for versus just, oh, like I know most of this information, here's like one thing that like would have taken me 2 seconds to find out versus taking 2 hours. That's what works for me, so that's what I'm recommending. Tip number 7 is very basic, but use a planner or something so you keep track of due dates. I would also use a planner to figure out which days I needed to study and how much. If I knew, let's say, OBGYN would take 4 days to study, I'd be like, okay, OBGYN part 1 of 4 on Monday, OBGYN part 2 of 4 on Tuesday. I'd usually throw in maybe around 2 days buffer. So I give myself a total of 6 days to study for that, just in case something came up and I needed to look over something else or I just couldn't dedicate that time that I'd planned. So use a planner. And last but not least is to get a good night's sleep, especially before an exam. I don't recommend pulling all-nighters. It doesn't work after a certain point and you can't really do that for every single test there is in PA school. It's just not sustainable. So get good night's sleep. That way you also won't be tired and annoyed and not able to remember anything when you're actually taking the test. Those are my 8 tips. Hopefully you found this helpful and I'll see you in my next video.